The children find the meaning of the words to elide the buckler in the dictionary. The tomes, books, will help them destroy the magnetic shield. Using synonyms found in the thesaurus, the users learn they must somehow cloud a knight. The Book of Talismans, Amulets, and Zodiacal Gems reveals the ruby's task is to protect against enemies. At the user base, Tesla begins to read the book, her grandchildren left behind.
Looks like we may never be able to crack this clue.
I know.
You look tired. Why don't you take a break?
I guess you're right. What are you reading?
Oh, nothing. What are you doing? Have you tried to decipher the words "lasers entwine the sign they send"?
We're still working on it, but my mind keeps wandering.
I can't stop thinking of new ideas either. I think of things I would have never thought of before.
I know. I keep thinking, what if the wipers found this place? All the books, all...
That sounds like something Miss Bookhart would say, Varian.
Oh, Abacus.
Abacus, I found the word laser in the dictionary. Look.
The letters in the word laser stand for light amplification by stimulated emission of radiation. Lasers concentrate light and send it out in a narrow beam. But this doesn't explain anything about how they entwine the sign they send. We can look it up in the encyclopedia before we start to read the book about lasers. Miss Bookhart said that if you want to learn more about a subject, the best place to start is the encyclopedia.
What subject did you want to look up?
We want to learn more about lasers.
Well, lasers are scientific devices. You might do better looking in a more specialized reference. There are special science encyclopedias in the reference section.
They're in the same section of the library as the encyclopedia?
Yes, they are science reference books, dictionaries and encyclopedias. They have more detailed information about physics, chemistry, earth science, biology, and so on than the general encyclopedia. Let's find a science dictionary. The call number would be...
In the 500s. That's a science classification.
Right, LIDAR. And there will be an R for reference before the call number.
Look, math dictionaries and dictionaries for different languages. I always wondered how people on Earth access different language vocabularies without an instant language program. And here are special dictionaries for social science terms. Here's one for sociology and another for politics.
We have special dictionaries and encyclopedias, reference books for all 10 main classes of knowledge.
This is arranged like a general dictionary.
Only all the words in here are scientific.
This is in alphabetical order also. And here's a page that tells how to use this book. There's a pronunciation guide and definitions and a sentence with the word used in context. And there are even illustrations.
This page shows the systems used in earth, plant, and animal classification. This one has the periodic table of earth elements.
Look, prefixes and suffixes of scientific terms.
Look up lasers, Abacus, under L.
I know how to find it, LiDAR. It's between lapse rate and lava. So it's on this page. Here it is. There's an illustration. It has a coil that entwines a rod.
What kind of rod?
We need to learn more than this.
Well, let's look in a science encyclopedia then.
This is alphabetical also. I found the L's. Here it is. A laser uses a crystal, such as a ruby. A ruby crystal laser. This flash tube entwines a ruby rod.
The wizard's clue said, a laser entwines the sign it sends.
So if a laser entwines a ruby, then it must send a ruby.
The sign it sends is the ruby.
Another part of the puzzle is solved. Let's go back to the computer. Varian, a ruby's task is to act as a talisman to guard against enemies, right?
Right.
And we're supposed to send the sign of a ruby with a laser.
Yes. And your father's a laser communication expert.
Yes, I know, but where do we get a ruby?
And how and where do we send it?
How do we get a laser?
There are still so many missing pieces.
This is your fault. I knew it was going to be like this.
Wait. Where's 2 feet away?
Yeah,
Don't even
well,
nobody to be in here. Well, wait.
he's not in there.
I just picked us to find somebody out here anyway. I mean, with all these trees and bushes. I mean, I think we lost him.
Let's take the main road to the old city. That imbecile Tooth is scouting there somewhere. And we know the users that sent those signals is probably there somewhere. And this one's trying to catch up with him.
Yeah.
And we'll get him too.
Perhaps we catch them all at once.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe Humbug will give us some milk. Come on.
I'm leading this.
What?
Come on. The main
I've
road's
been
this
leading all
way.
the time. What?
Come on.
You come back
I'm
here.
leading
I've been
this.
leading. I'm always going to lead.
Romeo, Romeo, wherefore art thou? Romeo, deny thy father and refuse thy name, or if thou wilt not, be but sworn my love, and I'll no longer be a Capulet.
Shall I hear more, or shall I speak at this?
'Tis but thy name that is my enemy. Thou art thyself, though not a Montague.
Athos, what's happened to you?
Why do you speak to yourself in such strange language?
I take thee at thy word. Call me but love, and I'll be new baptized. Henceforth I never be Romeo.
That's lucky, because your name is Athos, not Romeo. What are you doing?
I'm trying to find the king's familiar price. In the preface of the complete works of William Shakespeare, it says that the plays make better reading if you try to stage them in your mind. I thought that would help me understand that wizard's words.
That may be true, Athos, but there just aren't enough lunans for you to act out all the plays in the book.
But how am I going to find that quote?
The one that...
Quotes the king's familiar price, your victory's requirement.
You can narrow down your search.
How?
If you notice in the table of contents, Shakespeare wrote many plays about kings. The quote you need to find, "The King's Familiar Price," could be from one of those plays.
But there are 9 plays about kings. King Henry, King John, King Lear. It could take forever to read them all.
Especially if you try to act them all out, Athos.
Quotes the King's Familiar Price. Come with me, Athos, to the card catalog.
What should we look up?
Bartlett is the author. Bartlett's Familiar Quotations.
There's an R before the call number. That means it's in the reference section.
Let's go find it. The reference section has books of specialized information from each of the 10 main classes. This book is a literary reference book. It's shelved with other literature reference books like the Encyclopedia of Poetry, the Encyclopedia of Drama, and the Junior Book of Authors.
It has an 800 number.
Bartlett's Familiar Quotations has the most famous words ever written or spoken. Shakespeare wrote so many famous plays that many of his lines are well-known quotes, like, "Romeo, Romeo, wherefore art thou Romeo?"
A book of familiar quotations.
It's a literary reference book. I think I've used this book 1,000 times. When I heard a famous quote and I wanted to know who the author was, or when I wanted to find a quote to use in writing. See, there's an index of authors in alphabetical order. Look for Shakespeare.
Here it is. And under his name are all the names of the plays and page numbers after the titles. King Henry IV.
That reads as King Henry IV, Athos.
If you insist. King Henry IV, Part 1, Part 2. I'll read all the famous quotations from Shakespeare's plays about kings to find the one which quotes the King's Familiar Price.
And that should also reveal your victory's requirement.
Come in, children. This is Colonel Hogan.
Father, is that you? Where are you?
I found the wildlife refuge you directed me to. The information you gave me saved my life. I have built a small, primitive fire. Oh, Wiper scouts followed me, but I have lost them for now. I must warn you. The Wiper scouts seek your location and are presently headed toward the evacuated settlement on the main road.
At least you're safe, Father. We will try to find more information to lead you here. We've solved another part of the wizard's clue. We know we have to have a ruby crystal laser.
Why? What for?
We need to solve more of the puzzle before the Wipers find us. I'm going to begin reading a book on mythology.
Abacus, look after the others at the library, will you? I do not know when I will be able to contact you again.
What was the clue with the book Bullfinch's Mythology? Recalls the memory's memory. Is this a history book?
No, it's a reference book in the religion class, the 200s. It's a collection of stories called myths. They're not really fiction books, but they aren't exactly fact either.
Aha! You're reading Bullfinches. That's a marvelous book of myths.
In the introduction, it says there was a time when there were very few books on Earth, and even leaders of countries didn't know how to read, and history was passed on by word of mouth.
That's right.
And errors and exaggerations were included, and history became these strange accounts called myths.
You've got the idea. Mythology is handed down stories of different cultures. Myths are a mix of memory and imagination. Bullfinches is a wonderful reference book of myths of different cultures.
Then it will tell us what the memory's memory is.
I hope.
A horse, my kingdom for a horse. I found it. This must be it.
Must be what?
It fits the clue, don't you see? Quotes the king's familiar price, my kingdom for a horse.
Must you, Aphos?
But it worked, Abacus. I found Shakespeare's familiar quote. It's from the play Richard III, Act 5, Scene 4, line 7.
You mean you read the entire play?
No, I looked in the reference section, in Bartlett's familiar quotations. If I had known it was about a horse, but I didn't know the author, I could have looked in the word index in the back. See the word horse, my kingdom for a, page 218.
Then our victory's requirement is a horse?
Where will we get a horse?
Father has seen a horse. Remember, he said when he saw it, the Wiper Scouts ran away.
Yes, that's it.
I solved another part of the puzzle. A horse. A horse.
Remember the word screenger cavalier? We read in a thesaurus that a cavalier is the same thing as a knight, a mounted horseman.
That's right. And because the title of the book is Clouds of the World, I use the synonym clouds for screens. We need to cloud a knight, and we have to have a horse.
And a ruby, because the book on talismans told us that a ruby's task is to protect us from enemies.
And a ruby is also in the laser clue.
We found out in the Science Encyclopedia and in the Science Dictionary that a laser entwines a ruby, so according to the wizard, it sends a ruby.
And Bartlett's familiar quotations was the exact literature reference book that I needed to discover that our victory's requirement was a horse. The king's familiar price was his kingdom. My kingdom for a horse.
We use special reference books in science classification, in literature, in religion.
What does all of this mean to us?
We used the thesaurus and dictionary to decipher the words, these tomes offer succor.
So these books will help us destroy the magnetic shield.
A ruby talisman that protects us, a ruby sent by a laser.
A clouded night.
A horse?
Where do we get a ruby?
Where can we find a laser?
Where will we get a horse? Even when we learn the meaning of the parts, they make no sense as a whole.
But we don't have all the parts. And we may be left with a lot of parts and no whole unless we can read Volume 3 of the History of Wipers on Earth.
But it's at the base. We can't communicate with the base. There's no way to get it.
Nothing is impossible, Aphos.
There has to be a way.